Dun, 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 dun. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Stratosphere Lounge. It's Bill Whittle back again. Missed a week or two. Just wearing the makeup. Got the rosy glow from being in the studio there for the first time. I'd usually just sit in the chair, but tonight we decided we had to finish a couple of new videos that we're doing just down the hallway there. Ran a little longer than I thought. So sorry about being late tonight, and we'll try and get back on our 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock schedule in the future. As a matter of fact, I think we're going to be back on our regular schedule as far as frequency goes too, not just in terms of time. I've had just a terrific speaking schedule lately, and it's been running me ragged. I've had an incredible time. I've enjoyed being everywhere around the country. I'm going to Minnesota on Friday. I'll be in the Minnesota area for a couple days. And getting the virtual presidency up and all of my existing commitments with PJTV and all the other stuff. So, yeah, I've just been traveling like a crazy person. And it's starting to slow down. So next week I've got the week off, and hopefully we can, or at least the week in town, I should say, hopefully get back on a little more schedule here and try and get these things out a little more routinely. Because I love doing them. And it's a great privilege to be able to take these questions. Now, today as I said, we were just taking a couple of shows in there. Normally what I do for this loosely produced show is go through the questions section and pick my favorites and write them down. And I wasn't able to do that tonight. So tonight's going to be especially loosey-goosey, and I'm going to be reading these kind of on the fly as we go. So let's get started, why don't we? We'll go till at least 8 tonight. You're going to get your dollar's worth out of that. Somebody's saying there, somebody's saying no audio. I see audio, and most everybody else seems to have any problem with audio. Is that just one person? By the way, let's say hi to Starbuck in Arizona. I occasionally do special shout-outs to special friends and requests. So how you doing out there, Lieutenant Thrace? And I hope everything else is going well for everybody. So let's get started. Let's take a look at what we got over here on our questions for today. And I'm going to have to just kind of scan them real quick and see what we can take. I think the one that I did glance at very briefly that I've seen a few is this. It's the Rand Paul thing. And a couple people, I've got a question from Jen Reinheimer. What's my take on Rand Paul? And we had I glanced at something downstream too, saw something about John McCain. So let's talk about this whole Rand Paul filibuster, John McCain kind of thing, just in terms of what I think about it. I think Rand Paul doing the filibuster was not just a piece of excellent political theater, which we could use more of on our team. It'd be nice to see somebody who has the common sense and the nerve and so on to do something like this. So I was in favor of Rand Paul doing it just because it's a way to get people's attention. And anybody who knows how to get people's attention is an important player in the future of this conservative movement. But I happen to think, honestly, I mean this from the bottom of my heart, when the President of the United States produces policies where the Attorney General of the United States comes out publicly and says what we know they've been saying behind closed doors forever, when the Attorney General of the United States says it is now law, there's the legal groundwork, and also I'm just telling you now as the Attorney General, the President of the United States has the right to murder and assassinate American citizens on American soil at his sole discretion. My feeling about Rand Paul is that Rand Paul should have been the first of the 534 people who followed him to the floor of the Congress to stand up and denounce this absolute murderous tyranny on the part of this president and his administration. Not only am I not ashamed or upset about Rand Paul doing the filibuster, I'm simply amazed that every single other member of the House and Senate didn't. If you want to have a filibuster, if you want to engage in some political theater and make a case about something, the president assuming dictatorial powers of life and death over American citizens is a pretty good place to start, in my opinion. I was so impressed by him doing it, and it really was a Mr. Smith Goes to Washington moment, and good for him. I like Rand Paul better and better and better, and I started out liking Rand Paul. I think this is what we will get if we decide to have an actual conservative. And I think if a conservative decides to do something like this, the American people will follow him and push him all the way into the White House. So let's talk about a Republican who isn't wired as a conservative, and who the GOP leadership and, to be honest with you, the American people did try to push into the White House, and that's John McCain. John McCain and the rest of these so-called conservatives in the Republican Party, and of course the Democrats and the liberals, their position, because they're in the Senate, they're actually in the Senate, unlike the rest of us who don't get the nuances of all this stuff. So John McCain basically says, no, this is absurd to be even talking about the president assassinating Americans on American soil, even though the Attorney General just told us that he said he was able to do it legally. No, that's ridiculous. That's the kind of nonsense that could never, ever, ever happen in this country. Why could it never happen in this country, Senator McCain? Why? I'm sick and tired of people telling me these things. Why? That could not happen here. Tell me why. Because we have constitutional protections. We've just been told by the Attorney General that those constitutional protections are not going to be enforced. We had a public announcement that it will be at the president's discretion which American citizens he chooses to assassinate on American soil. Everybody should have run out of the Congress, and we should have gone to Washington with an army and pitchforks and knives, and we should have simply demanded that this tyrant resign. And so one person stands up and does that, and he's the outcast and the outlier. When John McCain says that such kind of talk is crazy talk, and that could never, ever, ever happen here, I would simply love to discuss this directly with John McCain on national television. And I would say to him, Senator, you say it can't happen here, but that is an admission that it can happen someplace else. So let's take a look at where it did happen someplace else. Let's take a look at Nazi Germany. Let's take a look at communist China and Soviet Russia. Did the people who committed these mass murders across the huge segments of their own people come to power saying, and if I am elected, I, Adolf Hitler, promise to leave Germany in ruins and murder 6 million of our own citizens? Is that how he came to power? Is that what happened? No, they came in promising free health care, and on the backs of other people said, no, this man's a reasonable man. He has a different viewpoint than we do. Nonsense. It never, ever, ever happens instantly or dramatically or overnight. All power grabs and all of these mass murder campaigns in human history have occurred because people have been willing to dupe the public into basically saying, you're nuts if you think, no, us kill people? No, that's crazy talk. Says who? I want to know who says it's crazy talk. It's happened before. How can John McCain, as an example, how can John McCain not be outraged by what the Attorney General said? The president has the power to assassinate American citizens on American soil without due process based on whether or not he considers them a terrorist. I just don't know what to say. John, I know what to say. John, thank you very much for your service to our country. It's time to go home now. It's time to go home. And John McCain and people like John McCain are the end of this movement. They're not only the end of the conservative movement, they haven't been conservatives ever. They're the end of the GOP. The Republican Party will continue to lose by ever larger amounts as long as the GOP is Democrat light. Who would vote for Democrat light? I've used this example a couple times. I don't know if I've done it on the Stratosphere Lounge, but it's a great analogy. We had the best brand in the world, right? We had Coca-Cola, and we won 49 states, and before that we won 45 states. We had conservatism, and people liked it, and once it was sold to them and people had a chance to taste it, they thought, this is delicious, best thing in the world. All of American modern history was basically this conservative vision of America, and everybody in the world wanted to come here because Hollywood sold Coke. Coke is our vision of America, this conservative view of America. And then, I'm sorry, somebody pointed out, I just want to back up because it's a great point, American infidel. It has happened here. There have been 100,000 Americans round up at the whim of a Democratic president for no crimes whatsoever. They were taken away and put in concentration camps. Don't tell me it can't happen here. Anyway, here's conservatives with Coca-Cola, most famous brand in the world, the most famous and popular drink in the world. And Pepsi starts gaining some market share. So what does the Coca-Cola board do? as Pepsi gains market share? They say, oh, we got to come up with something new. I know. Let's come up with new Coke, and it'll taste more like Pepsi. Now just think about this for a minute, because that's what the Republicans are doing. We now have a conservative party that's trying more and more to taste more like Pepsi, to sound more like liberals, get us closer and closer and closer to liberals and Democrats. So the question is, let's go back to something some of you may not be old enough to remember, but I remember. Who's going to drink new Coke? Who's going to drink it? Are the people who drink Coca-Cola going to drink it? No. We hated it. We liked Coke. We liked Coca-Cola, and we loved the taste of it, and then they told us we can't have it anymore. Are the Pepsi drinkers going to drink new Coke? No, they're not. They like Pepsi. They don't want a drink that tastes more like Pepsi. They like Pepsi. We had them outnumbered, and we had them outbranded. And so we are now deciding that we're going to be more and more like them because of people like John McCain. We got to appeal more to the middle. We got to be a little more moderate. We got to move the party towards the moderates. Says who? What do moderates believe? What is an independent person's political position? They don't believe anything. I'm not saying they're people without beliefs. I don't mean to insult them, but the very fact that they're independent or moderate means that they don't have a set ideology. Otherwise, we call it something else. And so what we're doing is we're trying to move a winning brand towards people that don't know what they want to drink. We certainly are not going to get the Pepsi drinkers. We've lost the Coke drinkers. And that's exactly what happened in 2008 and 2012. The people who like conservatism, the people who like Coke Classic, decided there is no Coke on the menu. I believe I'll have a water. I'm not coming. I'm not paying. You're not getting my money. The Pepsi drinkers got their Pepsi, and some small, thin little percentage of beaten down conservatives decided, well, I guess new Coke is better than no Coke at all. And they sat it out. That's why we lost. I am in favor of a big tent, yes. And I'm going to be using the comment section a little more actively tonight because I'm so poorly prepared. Yes, a big tent means we appeal to as many people as we can. And I'm not saying that people like John McCain and Rand Paul can't belong in the same party, because they do belong in the same party. But what John McCain is doing, and what the overall drift of the party is doing, is making us less and less and less sellable, less and less marketable, less and less palatable, and less defined. If the GOP's position is going to be, yeah, we're in favor of drone strikes too, on American soil, on American citizens, then what difference does it make if you're a Republican or a Democrat? And that's why conservatives sit home. They basically say, what difference does it make? It doesn't matter. It's all the same. So Rand Paul, God bless him. It was a brilliant thing to do in terms of political theater. I almost said it was a brave thing to do, but honestly, it seemed to me like the kind of thing that everybody should be doing. Every single member of the Congress should have been standing up to fight for these freedoms. It's called the Bill of Rights. It wasn't put there by accident. We have a Fifth Amendment, we have habeas corpus, and we have due process because people, up until the point where we put these into our government, had been taken away at night and killed for history, for human history. 7,000 years of written history. This is how things happen. You say something the emperor or the czar or the emir or the king doesn't like, and you disappear. You're gone. These rights were fought for and protected for centuries. And many, many people have not come home to their families and wives to die for these rights. And the Attorney General, speaking, of course, on behalf of Barack Obama, who now is the king and the emperor and the Lord, who has the power of life and death in his own hands and no one else's hands, he says we have the right to exercise these powers. When the Attorney General says we have the right to exercise this power, John, what do you think that is in prelude of? Why would a man make a public statement like that? Why do you think he would say, yeah, the president has the right to kill American citizens on American soil without due process, with drone strikes or whatever else? Why do you think he said that? Why? What possible reason could a man have for making a statement like that, other than to simply test the waters and to find out and get the American people used to the idea that this is coming? John, you're an idiot. I'm sorry. I respect your service for the country, but you're not just a bad senator, and you're not just an American who doesn't get America. You're also an idiot if you think that the legal representative of this administration says, yeah, president can kill whoever he wants to, and no one man gets to the floor of the Senate. Rand Paul 2016, baby, or somebody who is willing to get up there and stick it to these people. I've been doing one of the reasons I've been so absent lately. There's a lot of stuff going on in addition now to the virtual presidency, getting that thing launched and so on. But there's something else that I've been working on that I can't talk about in detail yet. But honestly, we think that it is time to get this message in the hands of our representatives who are currently elected and in the hands of our candidates, and we need to be training an entire new batch of conservative politicians and teaching them that we have to punch these people in the throats. I'm tired of playing defense, sick of it, tired and sick of being dragged off the cliff in the fourth quarter, watching a 28-point lead become a 21-point lead, become a 14-point lead, become a 7-point lead, become a tie, become a 3-point loss. I'm tired of it. Bloody tired of it. So that was my little Rand Paul thing. By the way, speaking of Ron Paul, I was in Canada. I was in Ottawa. What lovely people. Speaking at an event up there last week, and Ron Paul was one of the guest speakers. He's a charming guy. I realized that so much of my problems with Ron Paul were Ron Paul's followers. They were hard to take sometimes. The problem with people who are attracted to Ron Paul is I have a problem with anybody who takes this position, but let's just deal with it in terms of our home team. When you run into people who are more conservative, not only more conservative than now, but more conservative than Jesus, more conservative than Reagan, this kind of thing, I stand here as the only true conservative, and every single person who doesn't agree with me with 100% compliance is a Marxist. I saw a lot of that with Ron Paul's followers. Ron Paul himself was a charming man, reasonable, rational guy. I liked him a lot better than I thought I would. I'd never seen him in person. But Rand strikes me as the real deal. Rand impressed me right after he was elected. Apparently, Rand had a kerfuffle at a TSA checkpoint. He was at the airport. He was boarding a plane. He was going to Washington. I think he was going to Washington from home. And the TSA guy, look, they didn't signal out for treatment. Rand basically just said, I'm not standing in this line. And the TSA guy said, what do you mean you're not standing in this line? And Rand said, I don't have to stand in this line with everybody else and get patted down and searched and so on. And I thought when I heard this story, I thought, oh, what a diva. Who are you kidding? But it turns out that Rand Paul had read his Constitution. And Rand Paul said, no, it says right here that the people's representatives shall not be hindered or detained in any way as they go about the business of the people. I'm not standing in this line. You're detaining and hindering me. I'm a United States senator. I'm not going to be frisked, body searched. I'm not taking off my belt or my shoes. Get out of my way. I am going to Washington to do the people's work. And I heard that and I just went, oh, yeah. Fantastic. That's what we need. That's a guy who understands the theater of getting the point across. Isn't that brilliant? That's really what I'm trying to say, right? There are people out there who, there's not 1 in 100 of them, understand the Constitution well enough to be able to make that case in the first place. But for him to cause a scene over it and to risk being arrested over it is so brilliant because, first of all, he's saying, number one, the Constitution is, in fact, the law of the land, and the TSA is encroaching upon our federal our natural law rights. But then he's also saying, and by the way, this same document that presumably gives you the right to pat down that 6-year-old child, specifically in writing right here on this line, here it is, you can see the document itself, the same document that you use to pat down a 6-year-old girl specifically says, and here's the chapter and here's the verse, that I, as a representative of the people, may not be detained or harassed or whatever the exact wording is in the performance of my duties. So get out of the way. The constitutional right that you have to stop me or stop anybody else is voided by the Constitution that says you can't touch me as an individual. It's not true for that guy or that guy or that guy or that guy or that guy, that guy. Oh, Dana Rohrabacher, how are you? It's true for you. It's not for you. There's 2 of us or 1 of us or whatever who have the right to travel. That's theater. That's messaging. That's conviction. That's courage. That's all of those things. So Rand Paul is high in my books and rising dramatically. Couple more of these, and the guy might find himself president of the United States, just the same way that a man who's gotten to be my good friend Alan West is. Alan West had the election stolen from him by vote fraud. I have no doubt about that, and he seems to think that's the case. But in addition to that, Alan West lost his seat because his own party redistricted him because he was a threat to people like John McCain. Alan West is not afraid to speak the truth. And Alan West, I said this before, I'll say it again, is the most genuinely humble, warm, decent man I have ever met. We do the show live. It ends up on tape or on disc, I guess, goes to YouTube. But when I do it live, I get to see the comments section in real time here. And I've got a dear, dear friend named Cynthia Farhad who happens to be watching. Cynthia has been interviewed by him, appeared with him, met him on occasion, and she knows exactly the same. She knows exactly what I'm talking about. He is a genuinely sweet, warm, humble guy, self-deprecating, fantastic guy. I want to get Alan West back in the Congress. I want to get Rand Paul as much attention as we can. And the virtual presidency is a way for us to get this message out here. But comes a time when I think the best case scenario would be if I'm able to generate any interest or any fundraising or any look. If I'm an opening dog and pony act for a convention speech or for a if Rand Paul decides to run for president and having me there is kind of like, first there's the bearded lady and then there's the horse that jumps off of the platform into the pool of water. Then there's the virtual president. Then we have the half man, half woman, hermaphrodite. Then it's Rand Paul. Hey, man, that would be grand. That would be grand. So anyway, yeah, that was the best news I've heard in a long time. I got to tell you guys just real quick, as a quick aside, let me tell you my joke that I opened up with in Ottawa, because I was up there for 2 days before I spoke. I was speaking at a convention for Canadian Conservatives. By the way, the Canadians have a budget that's under control. They have spending that's under control. They have their rights been reestablished. They went through Trudeau 40 years ago, and they have recovered their country. They're fiscally sound. Their rights are being protected. Conservatives took over the wreckage of not only of Trudeau, but 25 or 30 years of socialism that followed, and they're making it actually work. So it was a pleasure to go up and talk to them. But the fun thing about Canadians is, and if you're a Canadian, you know this is true in your heart, and if you're not a Canadian but you deal with Canadians, you also know this is true in your heart. Canadians are utterly obsessed with Americans. Utterly obsessed. Most of them are as nice as can be. Most of them are all of them are as nice as can be. I never met a Canadian I didn't just adore. But they're fascinated. And I got a chance to meet a couple people. Went out a couple nights before we spoke and had a chance to knock some drinks back and stuff. And I'm being told about a show on Canadian television called Talking to Americans, where a guy comes down and talks to Americans about, he'll talk to like U.S. sailors and say, do you think it's a good idea that Canada should, maybe build up an army since Canada doesn't have access to the sea, this kind of stuff. And it's kind of a way to show how stupid Americans are about how little they know about Canada. Okay. So they're obsessed with us. And so I was the final speaker at the end of a day, and there was a lot of kind of policy, and it was just kind of droning on. And I got up there and I said, well, thank you very much for allowing me to be here. I was standing in front of rows of Canadian flags, and I mean this, I really do. I said, it's an honor and a privilege to stand here in front of all of these Canadian flags. Your country has always punched above its weight in terms of the battlefields of the world fighting for freedom. And the border between our two countries is not only the best border in the world, it's the best border in the history of the world. There have never been two countries that have been friends like our two countries. It's a real pleasure to be here. So they started applauding. And I said, so let me tell you now about the one subject that all American conservatives are talking about. It's the thing we obsess about. We can't get enough of it. It's all we talk about. We talk about it for hours and hours and hours a day. It owns our consciousness. And I'm referring, of course, to the War of 1812. And they started giggling a little bit. And I said, you burned our White House. You came down and burned our White House. You violent, militaristic savages invaded this peaceful sovereign nation to your south and burned our White House. And it still stings. It still does. We can't stop talking about it. Now, if a couple of you in this room tonight were to get liquored up a little bit and show some initiative and go down and do it again, tomorrow night, let's say, I think I could say with confidence that we'd call it square and all would be forgiven. As a matter of fact, if there's some plausible deniability going on here and a couple of you decent Canadian conservatives want to go down and burn down the White House tomorrow night, I think I've got a fairly good chance to throw my pull with the U.S. Armed Forces, and then I could have the Army come back and recapture Montreal. It'd be a win for everybody. Everybody'd have fun. All would be forgiven. We'd have ourselves a fine old time. So that was my Canadian story. They seemed to love it, and we had a lot of fun after that. I had a really good time. Preston Manning is an astonishing guy I'd never heard before. I never heard of before. He had me come up to his conference, Canadian leader up there who basically restarted the conservative movement by starting a new party. And I heard him talk about politics and party discipline, and he was just terrific. He was just great. He was talking about how we can't criticize each other. The social conservatives, you can't win without all of them. You can't say to the social conservatives, there's no room here. You can't say to gay conservatives, there's no room here. You can't say that. You got to have them all if you're going to beat these people. And I liked him very much. Then he asked something also that I thought was very good. He said, as conservatives, we believe in the right to free speech, and we believe that the right to speak your mind plainly is the fundamental right. But very recently, they had to eject from the party a conservative who said something along the lines of, he didn't see any harm from child pornography, how it actually harmed individuals, caused the people who watched it actual harm. And he said we had to throw him out of the party. And he said something I thought was really great, since we're on the whole Rand Paul, John McCain thing. But what he said, speaking about a party, was he says we have to take care of ourselves, and we have to include everybody. But he said, your right to free speech is your right to free speech, and you have that right. No one's trying to take that away from you. But if you say something that crosses the line, and you say it as a representative of our party, you've not just harmed yourself, you've harmed every member of our party who didn't make those outrageous statements. You have basically hurt people who also have a right to free speech because you are a conservative, and now we're all going to get tarred with the same brush. And so he said, so we did what we had to do. We had to immediately, forcefully, clearly, and without a moment's hesitation or a moment's qualification, say this person no longer speaks for us because we find that position reprehensible as a party. I thought, man, that's just so morally clear. So clear. And he said something I thought was really, really great. He said, ultimately what we're saying is, how can we ask other people to allow us to govern them if we cannot govern ourselves? Man. If we can't govern our own tongue, how can we be trusted to govern other people's lives? I just sat there and just said to myself, he's magnificent. He's the most decent. You ever meet people that just radiate decency? Well, Preston Manning was that kind of guy. I just liked him instantly. He was very kind to me, very nice, and had a lot of fun up there. And it's fun. It's fun to be the American among Canadians because you get to be the bad boy. Even when you're the good boy, you get to be the bad boy when you're up there with Canadians. I love them so much. I really do love those people. I'll go back there anytime I get a chance. All right, let's move on. Let's see what else we got here. Get some Star Trek questions. It was time for another sci-fi Stratosphere Lounge, which won't be tonight, but it's time to do another one. We have so much doing those theme things. Do I have a favorite Chive gallery? I do. I just can't tell you what it is. I want to talk about the Chive. I just saw that. There's a website called The Chive. It's thechive.com. I've been watching them, reading them for a couple years now. The Chive, for those of you who are not Chivers, as I am, is an amazing thing. It really is just a photo essay website. It's a place to go to kill time. We see they just have a lot of they have a lot of stuff. They have the daily morning awesomeness and the daily afternoon randomness, and they have all sorts of other sort of novelty picture posts. And basically, it's just fun. It's just fun to do. And there's a lot of cheesecake there. There's no softcore pornography, but you're about as close to softcore pornography as you can get. You're certainly in pinup material, right? You're in cheesecake material, and there's a lot of that. Thank God. And so it's just a website, but there's something about it that goes way beyond a website. That's why I wanted to talk about it. I was interested in the question. Because the community of people that visit the Chive, I watch this happen in front of my own eyes. It's fascinating because I think this is the future. I think this is the future of common sense resistance. I think it's the future of society and government and everything. At the Chive, there is, it's not just Fark on crack, Owen Brennan, it's better than that. The Chive has a cult. It has developed over time into a cult of decency. That's the only way to describe it. Everybody who becomes self-associated with this group called Chivers, the rules of admission are you have to be a good person. You have to be a decent person. And they have taken this to a level that's astonishing. It's astonishing to watch. They took a slogan from World War II in Great Britain, and my mom was a little girl during the Blitz. She was 10 during the Battle of Britain, and they put these posters up with the crown, and it would say "Keep calm and carry on." And these were just everywhere. You're getting bombed, and 3,000 people are killed in a night. Keep calm and carry on. It'd be a pretty decent motto for the rest of us here today. And so the Chive basically modified it and kept the crown and says, "Keep calm and chive on." So now it's KCCO and chive on, and you'll be in a bar someplace, and somebody will be wearing a Chive T-shirt. And here's what's amazing about the Chive. For a while there, somebody would be in a bar, and somebody be wearing a Chive T-shirt, and you'd walk up to them and say "Chive on," or "Hey, the Chive rules," or whatever, and they say, "Oh, you're Chiver too? Yeah, but Chiver, yeah, great." So it's kind of this sort of hidden secret society kind of private handshake kind of thing. But lately, for the last year or so, they've been doing so much absolutely spontaneous charity work that they decided that part of this ethos of this group of people who've never met each other, who were not recruited, who have the entire political spectrum from conservative to Republican, Republican conservatives to liberal Democrats. I mean, you got everybody there. You got everything. You got all different age groups. You got both sexes. You've got people from all around the world. But what you're finding out is not only now is it like, hey, that guy's a Chiver. The motto, the ethic of this Chive community is pay it forward. So what you're hearing again and 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 again is some waiter or waitress will have a Chive T-shirt on or something, and they'll have a tab for $35, and the guy will leave a $150 tip on a $35 tab, and I'll write KCCO on it. Just here, $100 KCCO. Keep calm and chive on. Wow, that made her night. And then somebody will be in a bar, and somebody will be wearing a Chive T-shirt, and somebody's bought them drinks. Who did that? He wouldn't say. He just walked out, bought you a round of drinks, and left. It's people pay it forward. You find stories about people who see a Chive bumper sticker on their car. You see these things because people take pictures with their cell phones of like the tip, and then it shows up on the Chive. And you'll see pictures of a guy who walked up to his car, and there's a note under his wiper blade, and it basically says, he's got a Chive bumper sticker on his car, and basically you see a little note that says, "Hey, your meter had expired, so I put in a couple bucks for you, KCCO." It's just fantastic. It's fantastic. It's what society should be. It's people voluntarily doing virtuous things because they see somebody who is wearing some kind of identification that they're part of a virtuous subset. So when I see somebody in a Chive T-shirt, I'm assuming that if they went to the trouble to get the T-shirts, and they're not easy to get because they put them out for sale and they're gone in 2 minutes. When you see somebody wearing this Chive T-shirt, what really kind of happens, again, none of this is dictated. Nobody talks about it. Nobody discusses it. It's not posted. It's not like this is the policy of it. No, it just is. And that's what's so interesting to me about it. So I see a guy in a bar wearing a Chive T-shirt. I'm going to assume that this is a guy who believes in this pay it forward thing. I'm going to assume that this is a guy who's going to leave a big tip or help somebody out. Not just Chivers, but he's not a dick. So I'll buy him a round of drinks, and if the waiter is a Chiver, I'll tip her obscenely. If I'm wearing a Chive T-shirt and she's the waiter, she will often, we decided to put this round. We didn't put this round on the tab. I'll take care of this one. It's fantastic. It's utterly fantastic. Can't say enough about it. I love them. And then of course you get stories like. I forget this guy's name, but because they have such a large readership, every now and then somebody will submit something. And I think the classic story was this. Somebody submitted a picture and it said, "This is my boyfriend or husband," I forget which. He's just come back from, I think it was Iraq, it might have been Afghanistan, pretty sure it was Iraq. And here's a picture of him lying in his hospital dead, and both of his legs and both of his arms have been blown off in service of his country. And this girlfriend or wife doesn't go into any of that. She just basically says, this is my husband, whatever his name was. Let's just say it was Mark because I don't remember. We're trying to raise $25,000 so that we can get a cabin and make it handicap accessible. And we're just wondering if anybody might be able to help. So they put it up on the main page, and they wanted to raise $25,000. And I think it was $450,000 within the first 24 hours. And it just kept going, and it kept going and going and going. And every time somebody's sick, somebody would send in a picture. Here's my friend who's either dying of cancer or fighting cancer, or here's a friend of mine who broke her leg, and she's got the KCCO thing going. And here's a chiver. It's a chiver. It's a member of a subset. It's a sub-community. Here's a sick chiver. Here's a chiver who's in the hospital. They will either get somebody saying in the comments section, hey, hang in there, you're going to beat this thing. Good for you. And then there's 700 thumbs up, or somebody will start raising money, and it's just fantastic. Keep calm and lounge on. Yeah, we should be doing that with the Stratosphere Lounge. The Chive is really important to me, and they're just down the street from where I used to live. I thought the Chive was in response to the Onion. But they called it the Chive because they're guys from Chicago who moved to Venice, and they live right on Venice Boulevard, just a couple blocks away from where I used to live. And they've got the swinginest offices, and everybody's just really cool. Now, like I said, there's a lot of cheesecake there, and there's a lot of F-bombs. So if either of those things bother you, then maybe that's not for you. But no one's making you go there either. And man, what cheesecake! Wow. And what fun. The photo essays are hilarious. They're just hilarious. They're just funny pictures. They're just great. But the thing about the Chive, like I said, that I like is that it's all different parties, it's all different ages, it's all different countries, it's all different people. They're just good people, and they do two things for me. They remind us that we can all actually get along if we just stop talking so much politics all the time. If the politics didn't come after us all the time, the whole world would be like the Chive. And the second thing that I like about the Chive is that it reminds me that human virtue is not gone. I'm not one of these people that thinks that virtue should be enforced on people. I don't think you should be required to help these people. But I'm also not one of these people, and sometimes you'll hear this from people who claim to be objectivists. I never saw this in Ayn Rand's writing. I never saw it directly from her. But sometimes you'll hear people kind of get on this, like I mentioned earlier, they're more conservative than that kind of thing. Any kind of charity is bad and wrong, and anything that's not enlightened self, that's nonsense. It's ridiculous. But it's just good to see good people doing good things on the spur of the moment, without any encouragement, without any structure, without any organization. It's just good people get together, do good things. So the Chive is fantastic, and I'm not going to tell you what my favorite gallery is. You can go and see for yourself and see if you can guess. Let's see, moving on here. Try to see if we can do something that I haven't flashed into the ground here. Here's something interesting. Michael Hanna wants to know, what do you think of 3D printing's ability to make an unregistered AR-15 lower receivers and high-capacity AK-47 magazines in the home? I want to take that question, not so much because of the gun thing, because I feel like I've been pretty clear on the gun thing, but I want to talk about 3D printers and other things too. And we are going to get Stratosphere Lounge shirts and Virtual Presidency shirts. I'm just so overwhelmed. Let me tell you how overwhelmed I am. Yeah, Joe Palladino got it. That's my favorite gallery. I am so overwhelmed now that I don't even have time to respond to the offers of help from you kind people that no one's too old to be a Chivette. I am so overwhelmed by the offers of help that I'm getting from you people. I can't even follow up on these things so I can get some of this stuff off of my back. But anyway, I want to talk about these 3D printers, because if you don't know what a 3D printer is, a 3D printer is something you can take a computer scanned object, anything. If I make this in 3D, and I know how to make this in 3D, and it's a series of vertices and spun vertices and then other things, and it's just a series of points in three-dimensional space connected by wireframe lines. A 3D printer will then be able to use technology to recreate this out of actual stuff. And it's difficult to describe how they do it, and different printers use different technologies, but a way to think of it is, if you imagine a bunch of powder, just a powder bath, and I'm simplifying enormously here. And let's say that a laser scans a pattern on that powder, and where the laser scans it, it starts to harden up and starts to solidify. And then it just extrudes this out. So it scans another layer, and every time it makes another scan, it curves and makes it smaller, then makes it a little bigger. You can print actual objects in the real world. And so you can not only print guns, you can print the barrels of guns out of plastic. I don't know if they've got to the point where those things will fire yet, but you can print any object that can be scanned or made in 3D. You could print. My model of Aurora could be printed into a real 3D model of Aurora, and something I've given serious thought to. 3D printers are going to change the world, because right now 3D printers are they're where the Apple II was, right? Or who am I kidding? They're where the TRS-80 was. It's a novelty that's very slow, that can do a very limited number of things, but the home computer is not a novelty. And if you think about this, folks, if you think about this, this is certainly not only theoretically possible, it's happening. It's being done today. Dita Van Treese wore a printed dress, an actual dress that was printed. So she never had the dress. I don't know if the dress ever existed. There was a design for a dress, and that was made to her measurements, and then this computer printed out the dress, and she put it on. But there was never any cotton harvested, and there was never any pattern cut. This thing came out of a printer. It's like the replicator. That's exactly right. Guitar SB. It's like a replicator. And the fact that it works means that we're just now beginning to see the beginning of it. And no, Dan, it's not replicators in 10 years. I think it's replicators in 2 years, 3 tops. It's amazing how fast this stuff moves. But think about this, guys. If you... Sally Moore, I'm sorry to keep interrupting. Sally, my sister's fine. Thank you very much, and thank you for asking. I saw she put it up there 3 or 4 times. I had to answer it. Think about this. If you have a really advanced 3D printer, a 3D printer that is, a current Mac to what the original Apple IIe is, orders of magnitude more sophisticated, then you don't even have to go shopping anymore. You simply browse online. I'd like I want a mouse. What do you want? I want a gun. I want a set of keys. I want a key made, whatever. And it just comes out of this thing. It's just printed. It's made. That's amazing. But the stuff I really wanted to talk about when it comes to 3D printing is I saw a 3D organ printer. Prints organs. Prints your organs out of your cells. Basically, what they're able to do is they're able to extrude a series. It lays down like a thin line, like a real thin strip of toothpaste. And so if you know what this kidney looks like, it'll start to draw the shape of a kidney, including all of the interior veins and arteries and all this other stuff. And it builds it out of your cells. And the reason it doesn't collapse into muck is that there's kind of a gel, like a gelatin structure around this kidney. And so it basically prints clear, 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 clear. Here's a little bit of kidney, clear, 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 a little bit of kidney, clear, clear, clear. And then it just builds it up. And then it's your cells. It was built out of your cells. They cloned your stem cells. So it's your kidney. It's not a kidney. It's not a transplant kidney. It's your kidney. They scanned your kidney. They built it out of your cells, and now it's your kidney. There's 0 rejection problems because they're your cells. It's amazing. Amazing. Where do you this is one of these inventions that you simply can't get. You simply can't see the back end of. There's no way to predict. When I first saw TRS-80, and we put in a little cassette so we could load a weird sort of a Star Trek game where it's like, Klingon battlecruiser in sector C7. What are your commands? 1, fire photon torpedoes. 2, fire phasers. 3, ray shields. 2, fire photon torpedoes. It's not even a graphic game. It's just a line game, right? If somebody told me when I first saw that back in 79 or 80, that exact same box with a little bit of tinkering, but the same thing, a home computer, would allow me to have a career where I speak to people around the world about politics from my home or using that box to edit videos. I would have never imagined it. I just couldn't have imagined it. And here we are. Here we are having a conversation because home computers have done that. These things, as always, will come down in price by orders of magnitude very quickly, and pretty soon you'll be able to print guns. You'll be able to print anything that you can digitize or scan. I mean, anything. I mean, my hand, for example. My hand is unique to me. This hand is unlike what's that line that they have in the Army? This is your gun. It's unlike. It's similar to other guns, but this is mine, and other guns are like it, but this is mine. I forget how that word. But anyway, this is my hand, right? So if I have a laser or a video scan my hand, if it does it in enough detail, there's no other hand in the world that looks exactly like this. Once it's in the computer, my hand can be printed anywhere in the world out of plastic, and if they have my stem cells and my a little vat full of those stem cells, they can print my actual hand, and there'd be 10,000 of my actual hands around the world. By the way, this fun thing about the show, I get to just ramble and just follow whatever trail I want to. Somebody out there knows the name of this woman. I bet you anything. There's a woman who she must weigh, I bet she weighs tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of pounds now, maybe millions of pounds, I don't know. And that's an odd thing to say, but basically there was a woman, I think it was back in the 50s. I love stories like this. I love it. 50s or early 60s, and she had an extremely aggressive form of cancer, and this cancer killed her, and it killed her pretty quick. This cancer grew like cancer had never grown before. They'd never seen anything like it before. And so when the woman died, she'd fill out these forms that allowed you to do biopsies and medical research and stuff. So they took some samples of her cancer cells, and because they grew so rapidly, they grew a culture of this woman's cancer cells after she had died. And this is my rifle, this is my gun. Anyway, this woman had cancer cells that grew so fast that other labs wanted it because they were so remarkable. If you're trying to cure cancer, what you want are cancer cells that are moving very quickly. It's why we sometimes experiment on gnats or mayflies or something in genetics, because they have a generation every 2 days. You want things quickly. This is my rifle. There are many like it, but this one is mine. Thank you, Dave. So back to the story. This woman dies. They make a culture of her cancer cells. Other labs realize that this is a remarkably aggressive form of cancer, so they request a few cells that they can grow their own cultures on. And over time, this woman who died 50 years ago exists. Some part of her DNA, her cells, her living dividing DNA. Henrietta Lacks, I guess that's right. The HeLa, I think it is the culture. She exists in hundreds of thousands of places around the world, tens of thousands of places certainly. This woman's cells are scattered across the earth, and they are in virtually every single serious medical lab in the world. Isn't that interesting? I find that kind of stuff just fascinating. Yeah, but printers will allow you to print weapons. Printers will allow you to print keyboards. Ultimately, here's where you get to be this is when you know you're starting to get to the main frame, right? The main vein. When printers can print other printers and robots can build other robots, then you get what's called the Santa Claus machine. Santa Claus machine is something that some people have used of evidence of the fact that extraterrestrial intelligences don't exist. Because what they're saying is, if you have the ability for a machine, and the machine can build anything, if the machine can just use raw materials and assemble anything, then the first thing that it assembles is copies of itself. Because then these machines that can assemble literally anything, can build a car, can build a telephone, can build anything, then these machines start building copies of themselves. And Henrietta Lacks, anyway, as these machines spread out, all they do is build copies of themselves, and then they build whatever is needed. And the argument was, if there is an actual extraterrestrial intelligence, the universe should be filled of these machines, because once you send one, you would send one of these machines, or at least the plans for one of these machines, to a new solar system. It'd be the first thing you would build if you were going to colonize a new solar system, is you'd build a Santa Claus machine that could make your rocket engines, could make your habitats, could make your refineries, could make your farms, could make your crops, could grow crops, create crops out of just 3D materials. Von Neumann machine? Yeah, Johnny von Neumann? Perhaps that's what it was called. So when you see things being printed, when you see organs being printed in a lab out of your own cells, and when you see the bottom part of an AR-15 being created out of nothing but a little thing full of dust or liquid, you know that we are in interesting times. And one of the great things that's so tragic and fascinating and interesting to me is we are reaching levels of technological sophistication, the likes of which I never imagined, and I grew up in the space age. Our technology is far more impressive than I ever expected our technology to be because of the information age. I never, ever imagined that this stuff would be possible. Most of everything that's happened in Star Trek is happening today. Diagnostic beds and, energy weapons in the field and replicators and all this stuff. But the great tragedy is that while our technology is advancing so much faster than we ever imagined, forget about our morality or we don't have the morality to control these terrible forces or weapons. Our nerve is gone. We have the technology now to do the things that we used to have the nerve for, but not the technology. Now we've got the technology, not the nerve. We don't have the intelligence to use these things. We are, without question, becoming stupid. There's no question at all that people, on average, the average intelligence level is going to be falling, because it used to be that you could only have so many stupid people and you couldn't feed them all. But when everybody gets fed, no matter what, not that I think that's a bad thing, don't get me wrong, the overall human intelligence, I think, is falling. And it's so bizarre and tragic to me that that just as we begin to have the ability to literally, and I mean literally, the ability to, sometimes when I get a text, I always want to check out, make sure everything's good. When we have the ability to remake nature in our minds, when we have the ability to literally manipulate and create out of thin air things that we can only imagine, to have that ability and not have the courage or the nerve to use it for good, I don't know what to say, You're trying to go to the moon, and you do go to the moon using slide rules. And now that we've got computers that are so magnificent, I mean, this thing not just power an Apollo program. This thing probably gets you to, without question, this thing has the processing power to get you to another star. What do you say? It's horrible. It's just heartbreaking. We have our brains, and that's another thing. The difference between the cognitive elites and the large numbers of people is, I mean, look, you got this iPhone, right? The people that develop these things are the smartest people who ever lived. So on one level, we are in fact more intelligent than we've ever been, and we're getting a bandwidth problem now. But on another level, what do you say? We just are losing it. Now I have to play the bandwidth game. Come on, baby. Oh, by the way, one of the things that we're talking about doing here is we are really giving very, very serious consideration, and not just consideration. We are going to replace the internet in this building. We're on a DSL line, and it's terrible and it's slow, and we're going to replace it. We're going to get serious internet into this building in the next month or two, or maybe the next couple weeks. We're going to have to do a special line that's literally going to come in on the telephone direct to our office. Nobody else in the building is going to get it, and we're gonna do it. So sorry about the delays and the Ustream hiccups and stuff. It's not Ustream's fault; it's our fault. We've got terrible internet in this building, and we were given guarantees when we moved into the building. They're just not being met. 7:30. We'll do another half hour. Why don't we? Let's see what we got. You see if we can find something interesting, something different. Oh, this is kind of cute. Dave also wants to know what a wonderful week, or says, what a wonderful week for South America. They lose Hugo Chavez and they gain a pope. Yeah. Hugo Chavez is a tyrant, and he's a dictator, and he's a murderer, and he's all these things, and the left loves him because the left loves the ability to use force to make people do things for their own good, The left worships power. And when I say power, I don't mean like political power, like the power of the ballot box. The left worships the ability to make people do things by force. Hey, Starbuck. And so, of course, they loved Hugo Chavez. Hugo Chavez retired was a millionaire or billionaire, I forget which, is one of those many illionaires, because he took this country's wealth and put it in a bank account. Oh, he's helping the poor. He cares about the poor. He lives and dies by the poor. Nonsense. He's a tyrant. He's a dictator. He's a thief. He's a murderer. He's all those things, and he appeals to people's sense of I only care about the poor. And these useful idiots, not only in Venezuela and throughout the world, but especially here in America, I'm talking to you, Sean Penn, say he's a great man and what a fighter for the people he is. Well, let's talk about what a fighter for the people Hugo Chavez was. His country is now being eclipsed by other countries in South America whose people are doing much better than his people, and they don't have the benefit of trillions and trillions and trillions of free dollars sitting beneath the earth. In other words, the economies of the countries surrounding Venezuela means that the people who are not Venezuelans who live next to Venezuela are doing better than the Venezuelans, even though the Venezuelans have this incredible asset, just a cash machine. It's like you put a hole in the ground and money comes out. Nope. So this is the kind of thing that we have to be doing all the time. Socialism is a war on the poor. Barack Obama hates poor people. He hates minorities and poor people. He despises them because if he didn't, he would get out of the way of the economy and he'd stop this nonsense like minimum wage laws and he'd let them get a job and have some control over their lives. Barack Obama is a socialist, and socialists hate poor people. That's why they simply will not allow them to become rich. What else do you say? Chavez was a horrible man. I'm glad he's gone. I'm genuinely glad he's gone. People say you should never speak ill of the dead. I don't know. There's some people who need killing. And he was a tyrant. All these Middle Eastern tyrants need to go. They're bad people. They need killing. And I'm just very, very, very happy he's gone. I'm mostly happy because I can't bear to see another American millionaire who's was protected by civil rights, by the Constitution and the right not to be droned in their own country. It may be now that all these people have, since they've been willing to back this power play on the part of the president, is maybe the only thing protecting them now is that they're Democrats. Maybe their Democratic Party card is the only thing that's going to protect them from being predator struck. The world is a strange place, and it just gets stranger and stranger and stranger and stranger every day. I lost my Facebook page. Let me get it back here. Here we go. Oh, and sorry, the second half of that, Phil's having a moment, is we have a South American pope now. Apparently, he's fiscally socially conservative, but a Jesuit. There's a lot of liberation theology in South America. It's the first American hemisphere pope. He seems old for a pope, in his 70s, I think, 75, something like that. But I thought what the previous pope did was remarkable. I really did think it. I'm not a Catholic, so there may be complete horrors that I'm unaware of. But for a man to say, I don't feel like I'm up to this job and that this job deserves the full powers of somebody and I'm not that guy, I admire that kind of thing. Let's see. What else we got? Ooh. I'll do it. Brent Jarity wants to know, how do I convince my wife to let me serve my country and join the Marines? Well, if I didn't believe that joining the military was a good thing, I wouldn't have tried to join the military myself. I've spent, 12 years of my life trying to get into the Air Force Academy. And flying fighter jets is actually risky business, a fairly high fatality rate among actual frontline combat pilots. It's a hard thing to say to somebody. It's a hard thing to try to convince the person that loves you to let you do something like that, because it's not just you that's in peril during the time that you're in the Marine Corps. They're in peril during the time that you're in the Marine Corps. I think in many ways, I'm not immune to what actual combat is, and I understand that there's nothing like that. But I've often thought in many ways the families of the men that are deployed actually suffer more than the men that are deployed, because the men that are deployed, men and women now obviously, I apologize, the Americans that are deployed, even if they're deployed into frontline combat units, will spend a couple hours a day on a patrol or in harm's way, with a very real chance of being killed. But for the rest of the time, they're back in their barracks. There's still a threat of mortars and IEDs and all this other stuff. But as a vet deployed today, most of the time you have, it's like the saying they say about airline pilots, they get paid because hours and hours of sheer boredom punctuated by a few moments of absolute terror. I think what I'm trying to say is, if you're deployed to Iraq, let's say, and you're in a combat unit, you know when you're in danger. You know when you're on your patrol, you're in danger, and you know when you're back at the base, you're relatively safe. But if you're the wife of one of those people, as far as she's concerned, you're out on patrol all the time. She never knows when you're in danger and when you're relatively safe. As far as the families are concerned, you're in danger every minute that you're gone. They don't know when you're actually on patrol and when you're back, on base. And so they just, on some level, feel that you're out on patrol all the time. I think it's harder on the families than it is on the soldiers. So what I would say to your wife is this. First of all, the reason that we worry when we send our men and women over to places like Iraq is because places like Iraq are dangerous. You can be shot dead on the street in Iraq. You can be killed by mortars in Iraq. You can be blown up by IEDs in Iraq. And you worry when your family members go over there because those things don't happen here, at least most of the time. There's some very violent parts of certain inner cities, but most of the time you don't have to worry about that here. That's why we worry about them when they go. The reason that you don't have to worry about being mortared here or sniped as you walk down the street to get your groceries here, or the reason you don't have to worry about your little girl being run over by a tank here, is because people go over there and do those things. It's because soldiers, and when I say soldiers, I'm speaking, of course, about Marines, soldiers, airmen, sailors, and Coast Guardsmen, because people join the military and put themselves at risk so the rest of us don't have to be at risk. And if nobody does it, then we will be at risk. If we were to simply abandon our military, sink all the aircraft carriers and pound all the swords into plowshares and cut up the fighters and the bombers, just be a matter of time until our country was overrun by the kind of animals that overrun places like Egypt and Iraq and Afghanistan. And then we would regret the fact that certain of us didn't take the risk voluntarily and take upon themselves that horrible, not just the risk of being killed. People do not come back the same. You go out and you serve in combat. You see things, and things happen to you that change you. You're never the same. You never are ever the same again. People who've experienced combat do not come back the same way. Whether they're killed or not, whether they're wounded or not, they may not have a nick on them physically. Once you've seen a friend of yours have his head blown off, once you've seen dead bodies lying in the streets, and enough dead bodies so that you don't even realize that it's a problem. Once you're used to seeing dead people on the ground, you're not the same person that left. So how do you say to a woman who loves you like that, Brent? How do you say, you got to let me do this? I don't know how you say that other than to say, certain people are wired in such a way as that they run to the sound of gunfire. Certain people understand that this isn't free, that this isn't the default state of nature, that the world is not Disney World, occasionally punctured by acts of violence. The world is a violent and horrible, murderous place, occasionally punctured by acts of Disney World. And so the most that you can do to show your family that you love them is to go over there and join the armed forces of the United States and try to defend this world that we have. And that may cost you your life. And it may cost you your eyesight or your hearing, may cost you a limb, all of your limbs, some of your limbs. If you are in the Marine Corps and you are deployed as a combat infantryman, very likely it will cost you at least some part of your mental health, some part of your sanity, some part of you that's not hardened and armored up internally will be armored up in the process of you going out there, and when you come back, you won't be as innocent as you were when you left. So I think you simply have to say that what this is this is simply the greatest act of love that people can commit. That's really what it is, right? I mean, you're really saying, I love my country, I love my family, I love my people, I love this way of life so much that I'm ready to give up my life for it. I'll tell you this, Brett. The fact that you're having this discussion with your wife means that you're a good man and that she's a very lucky lady. And I would simply say that that if you feel strongly that you have to go and you don't go, then I'm not going to say you're going to regret it. I'm not going to say she's going to regret it. But I am going to say that nowadays, what's the percentage of people that serve in our armed forces? Less than 1%, certainly. And the number of people who are combat veterans, was it 10th of 1%, 100th of 1% of people? What's the percentage of the population of this country that enjoys the benefits of our military forces actually engaged in combat? It's nothing. It's so small, and it gets smaller all the time. And by the way, I saw something here in the comment section that's worth mentioning, because we talk about the sacrifice and we talk about the wounds and we talk about the death and we talk about all this other stuff, but it's not fair to do just that. Somebody here pointed out that Alan Crowden said being in the Navy was a lot of fun. I'll bet it was. Flying fighter jets looked like enough fun to me so that I wanted to do it enough so that I was ready to die for it. It looked like that much fun. It's less than 0.3% according to 0.3%, not 3%, 0.3%. Thank you, Alan. And it is fun. It's fun. It's a fun thing to do. And if you're a young male, and now young females too, I know a lot of people, I got to know a helicopter pilot real well, you get to do things. You know that old Army ad, we do more before breakfast than you're going to do all day? These guys do more before breakfast than you're going to do all year. Actually, to be honest with you, if you're talking about the guys who are actually combat deployed Rangers or certainly the special operations guys, these guys are going to do more before breakfast than you're going to do in your entire life. Yeah, I would simply say, Brent, that it's important to you that it is a calling that is not experienced by everyone, that it is an act of love. And you also, Brent, you have to play ball with this too. You have to be honest too. I mean, you also have to understand before you try to convince your wife to do this. You have to understand not only the risk that this entails to you, you have to understand and be comfortable with what you are doing to her. Because best case scenario means you're leaving her alone. That's if you come back in one piece with all the parts attached and no PTSD or any of that stuff. You're still going to be gone for a long time, and she's going to be here alone. I think that's really the biggest part of it. You got to be. How do you feel about that, man? Are you okay with that? Because it's not just you running off having a good time either, or fighting for your country, or all of those duty things. She is going to be alone for years. And if you decide to make a career out of it, she's going to be alone for most of her life while you're deployed overseas. That's a hard thing to ask somebody to do. And it's a hard thing especially to ask somebody to do if you didn't meet them under those circumstances. It's different, when you see girls who are like, they meet a guy and he's a, naval aviator candidate, and he's at Miramar, or he's a graduate of Annapolis or something, and she knows what she's getting. This is a military guy. It's a military life, and I'm ready for this. But if you decide you're going to marry somebody and then suddenly they decide, guess what? Not only do I want to put my skin at risk of having holes shot in it, but I'm going to be on the other side of the world for the next 20 years, and you're not. That's a lot to ask. I'm really glad I got this question. I think if you ask, I think probably the final thing I might say about this is, if you ask veterans and veterans' families if it was worth it, I know a lot of veterans, and I would say the huge majority of them would say yes. And furthermore, I'll say the veterans that I know are the best people I know. They're the best people I know. There's something. Let me tell you something. I get to the heart of this right now. When I lost the ability to go fly jets for the Air Force or to fight in a combat unit or any of these other things, I got lucky. I didn't have to go, and I didn't have to get shot at, and I didn't have to risk getting killed, and I didn't have to risk getting hurt, and I got to stay a kid, and all those other things. But I'll tell you what I really missed. I didn't miss the jets. I didn't miss the jet fuel. I didn't miss the excitement. I didn't miss the chance to put a missile off a rail and watch a bad guy go down. I didn't miss any of that. What I really missed, and the part I regret the most, is because I missed making the best friends that you would ever have in your life. I missed the experience of being under fire. I missed the experience of being able to face myself and tell myself what kind of a person, what kind of a man I really am. I missed that opportunity. I feel like I'm less of a man because of it. That's the honest, unfiltered truth. I feel like I missed a fundamental test, which I either would have passed or not passed. I don't know. I think I would have done well. I don't know. That's the part that is so damning. I don't know. I don't know what I would have done. And when I talk to guys who really do, I got to know some special forces guys and guys who are out there every day. They go out 2-3 times a night. There's something about the life they lead that I envy enormously. I envy it. To be that alive, to be that alive, to spend your day training to go meet the worst people in the world and kill them. And the people you depend on, it's not like show business, right? It's not like, hey, how's it going? Oh, yeah, hey, Bill, we're going to do this movie. Oh, fantastic. Yeah, the money's on its way. Oh, no, it's a done deal. It's in the bank. Oh, yeah. Well, it's not in the bank. It doesn't show up. No, everybody lies out here. Everybody tells stories. Everybody does all these things. If you're going down a hallway and you're in a compound in Abbottabad, let's say, and you're about to go up to the 3rd floor where a tall gentleman has been spotted, pacing the grounds, you go through that door and the guy behind you is watching that hallway or watching his quadrant or whatever, and he is not going to take a powder on you, right? That guy's going to do what he said he was going to do. That's an amazing thing. You don't see that very often. That's why I like flying so much. I think the thing I like most about flying is working the radio and working and interacting with, I've said this many times, interacting with other pilots and interacting with the ground controllers, because I absolutely worship working with capable, competent people who do what they say they're going to do and do it well. That's what I love about flying. I love being around pilots. I love being around competent people who do dangerous things well. That's a fantastic feeling. That's the Greek definition of happiness, right? Isn't the Greek definition of happiness using all of your powers to maximum ability? So, Brent, you have a chance to do something very important, and a chance to do something that will change your life in some ways for the better and in some ways for the worse. And your wife is going to have to agree to do that with you, because she's going with you. She is not going to be your wife anymore. She's going to be a Marine wife then. There are some benefits to this, but I don't think they make up for it. I don't think being a Marine wife is better than being married to somebody who's home. But I do think being a Marine is better than being a guy who's not. Here's a related question. What's your position on women in combat? Haven't heard too much from you on that. When I was ready to fly jets for the Air Force, it was 1977, 78. We hadn't seen any women pilots in combat. We hadn't seen any women pilots in commercial aviation, really many of them either. And I thought that being a pilot was a steely-eyed missile man thing to do, and I wasn't sure that girls could do it. And I didn't like the ideals of girls doing it. And then we started to watch women get involved in combat, and I got to meet some people, some women who were helicopter pilots. I had women flight instructors, women who were instructors on my instrument rating, for example. And they're superb. Superb. So that's not the end of the story, however. There's a bigger part to the story than this. So my opinion on women in combat is nuanced. The first thing I'll say about women in combat is this. If they cannot pass the exact same physical, mental requirements than men, then they should not be in combat. If a woman can lift the same pack and carry a 150, 200 pound, who am I kidding? A 200-pound man with 150 pounds of equipment on her, if a woman can carry a guy out of combat as well as a man, that's the first step. But if she can't, then we're just going to get people killed, right? I have heard, now I don't know anything about this, I just heard this anecdotally, but I have heard that when you see a paramedic go out, when an ambulance goes out, it used to be an ambulance would go out, but now they have to have a fire unit go with the paramedics. You see this all the time in LA anyway. You don't ever see an ambulance deploy without a fire truck. And I have been told, anecdotally, that the reason is because paramedics can be women, but if you need to physically carry somebody out of a building, you might need a fireman to do that. Now, part of this is accepting the reality of reality. The fact is, my vision in my left eye was too soft for me to be a 2020 fighter pilot, so I didn't get what I wanted. I know there are a lot of women out there who want to serve our country and a lot of women who want to serve in combat, and I know that they should have a right to do that. But if they are incapable of doing the physical requirements that men in combat have to do on a daily basis, then by saying, well, we're going to allow you to do this in spite of that fact, that means that sooner or later somebody's going to be killed because they weren't carried out of a situation where a man could have carried them out. That's the first level. So what this means to me is, if a woman helicopter pilot qualifies on the helicopter to the same standards as the men, then she is an asset and needs to be treated with absolute equality. Now, we talk about women in combat. We're talking about actual ground combat. We're not talking about air-to-air combat because, frankly, a fighter jet can be flown by a woman as well as a man. We did see, as women were being phased into jet fighter roles, we did see some preferential treatment where women who were not as good as they should have been got promoted and got opportunities, and they messed up. And that's political correctness at work, and I have no patience for this at all. But the fact remains that there are many extraordinarily excellent women pilots in the world out there today, and if they get to qualify to the same standards as men, then they should get to do it. Now, ground combat's a different story. There's very few women that can lift what a man can lift. And this is just the reality of the situation. If you look, we've had this conversation before, but it's shocking, really, if you think about it. If you look at the fastest woman in the world, the woman who just set the 100-meter dash record at the last Olympics, and you look at her time, you will find that there's not a college in America that doesn't have at least one, if not scores of males who can run faster than the fastest woman in the world. Many high schools have men that can run faster than the fastest woman in the world. Most high schools have many, many, many men that can lift more weight than the strongest woman in the world. It's not a criticism of women. It's the biology of the situation. When you start denying the reality of the world, you are no longer a conservative by my definition. So, if you have a woman that can carry a guy out of there, that's the first thing. Now you get into more subtle issues. And the more subtle issues are not even that. Let's assume, for example, for the sake of the argument, and it could be the case, I'm not saying it's not the case. Let's assume for the sake of the argument, you have a woman who's strong enough to be able to carry a man out of the battlefield, lift the same amount of weight, pass the same physical standards that a man can pass. Then you get into a separate issue. And the separate issue is, are women, just beat me to it, are women prisoners treated the same way as men? They're not. Women soldiers are raped by the enemy. Men aren't. Well, they may be, but they're not virtually guaranteed to be. And you could even say that a woman who wanted to fight in combat, who voluntarily accepted that risk, deserves to fight. But there's one more level to this, and that level is this: if a woman is deployed in a combat unit, and it is known that she will suffer treatment that other men will not suffer as prisoners of war, does that then cause her male squad members to take risks that they would not have taken otherwise in order to protect women because they're women? And by the way, it's got nothing to do with test scores and nothing to do with, well, she scored a 90 or in this she carry 100. No, men are built to protect women. And I don't care how deadly that woman is. I am concerned, I don't have the answers here, I'm not pretending to have the answers, but I am concerned that a group of men would expose themselves to unnecessary risk in order to protect women squad members of their fire team. I could be wrong about this, and if I'm wrong about this, I'd be happy to admit that I was wrong. I don't know the answer, but I suspect that men would take risks that they would not otherwise take to protect women on their team. And frankly, if they didn't, I'd be really disappointed in them. Now, with that said, let's get some of the ridiculous stuff out of the way. You have women who are, I mean, what was her name? Jessica something in the Iraq War. Look, you have soldiers fighting, and everybody's armed in theater. And when you have a truck driver or any other personnel, and things start going south, and these women are just putting up a fight, I want those women as well trained as they can be. They're deadly. They're just as deadly as anybody else. I've been out on the shooting range with people who are watching this show right now, and they punch holes in things that just astonish me and make me feel like, my God, I'm ashamed to show my face. So yes, of course, I want them to be as deadly as possible. I want them to be as capable as possible. There's without doubt probably hundreds of thousands of women are more qualified than many hundreds of thousands of men in terms of some of this combat stuff. But I don't know the answer to this. What I do know is this: I am not willing to have our soldiers killed for somebody's theory. I'm not willing to do it, and I'm not willing to have somebody killed because somebody thought it was unfair that they didn't get to go. It is unfair that you don't get to go. Life is unfair. It was unfair that I didn't get to do what I wanted to do. It's unfair that I didn't have the vision to fly these jets. It's unfair that some people are too short to be basketball players and some people are too big to be jockeys. It's unfair. So my answer to this would be this: if it could be proven to the satisfaction of the people whose lives depended on it, that women in combat are capable of meeting all of the physical requirements of men, and that women in combat further are treated by the men in their squads as men, and that they're not taking any other risks, then I have no problem with this whatsoever. I say good for you. Anything that we can do to make people live the life they want to live, to have the freedom to fulfill their sense of their own destiny and purpose in life, I am behind. But I will not sacrifice people's lives on the altar of political correctness. Now we have here She-Wolf, who says she disagrees about protection. She says that if you're one of the guys, then the guys treat you like a guy. If that is true, I said I don't know. If it is true, then I have no objections. I have none. But I don't think we get to pretend that there's not a serious issue at work here. So that's that. 7:54, we got one more. Let's do one more. We'll call it a night. What do we got? It's not really a question. I don't know if you get to see this in tape. Frank Brown says, I'm happy and sad. After prolonged unemployment, I finally landed a job. However, I have to get up at 4 a.m. to go to work, so the show is now an hour past my bedtime. Frank Brown, if you watch this on YouTube or if you get to see it later, congratulations and good for you. It's terrible to be unemployed. I've been unemployed for long periods of time, and if you're unemployed long enough, you begin to think you're never going to work again. And the fact that you took a job that means you have to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning means you're a person of character and a person of ambition and a person who is, for some reason or another, not suffering from the genetic defect that says it's easier for you to get somebody else to go up at 4 o'clock in the morning and go to work for you so that you can take part of their pay and stay at home and sleep all day. Good for you, Frank Brown, and I hope you get that job squared away as soon as possible. And I have no doubt that a person with your discipline and your ambition will soon find yourself hiring other people to work at 4 a.m. and you can get to work at 8 or 9. I'm proud of you, Frank. Good for you. What else we got? I apologize for this, by the way. I just literally shot in here as always. And a couple people asked about the religion thing, and I ducked it today because I wasn't really prepared for it. I just literally came in the chair, and when I say prepared for it, it wasn't like I wasn't emotionally prepared for it. I just it's not focused enough for it. I'll get to that next time. Well, let's see. We'll do one more. What is my view on ending the Federal Reserve? You know what? I don't want to do that. I just don't. I'd love to take it later. I don't want to close with that. I want to find something a little more personal. Hey, first person who asks a personal question on the social stream gets their question answered. I'll talk about the whole religious thing next time. All right, we're going to look here. We're going to find out who can get that first question in. If it's weird or quirky, they get it answered. North Korea. I'll do it. I'll do it. You know, here's what I'll do. I'll talk about North Korea. I did this on Trifecta, but I'll do I do want to talk about North Korea because I understand the situation on the ground in in North Korea. I understand that the North Koreans have a large standing army. I understand they have a lot of artillery tubes that are built into the mountain, and apparently they have these trap doors that open for less than a second in order to get the round out and all that stuff. I understand that North Korea is not a joke and not a toy, but Kim Jong-un basically, not threatened, he just came out and said that the United States of America is going to suffer nuclear annihilation at the hands of the North Korean people, and that he is going to launch a nuclear strike against the United States. I take people at their word. When somebody threatens my life, I'm not going to assume that they're joking. I'm going to assume they're serious. So, my position as virtual president with regard to North Korea would be this. The dictator who runs the prison camp known as North Korea has said that he will launch a nuclear first strike against the country that is my primary responsibility to defend. So let's be really, really clear about this. As a result of this threat, it is now going to be U.S. policy that anytime the North Koreans put a missile on the pad, as they erect the missile, as they get it vertical, before they can fuel it, that missile will be destroyed by one of the many means at our disposal, and I'm not going to choose to tell you which. But from this point forward, there is no North Korean missile that is going to get vertical, or certainly stay vertical, for the time it takes to fuel it, because any time we detect a North Korean missile being prepared for launch, and we can detect these things instantly, that missile will be destroyed by the forces of the United States of America. And those missiles will continue to be destroyed by the forces of the United States of America without explanation, without warning, until such time as the dictator in charge of North Korea makes a public announcement saying it is no longer his policy to launch a first-strike nuclear attack against the United States, and he has to make that declaration as publicly and as domestically as his initial threat was. They will not have any more nuclear missiles because they will not have any more missiles. The next time a missile is brought out from a bunker or a hangar and prepared for launch, it will be destroyed before it can be fueled, period. That's it. How hard is it? Now, let's say he calls our bluff. What happens? Well, we're not bluffing. He puts a missile on a pad. We destroy it with a cruise missile or with B-2 strike, whatever, I don't care. We've got many means to destroy a missile. What's he going to do? Is he actually going to shell South Korea over that? Is he? I don't know. I can't predict, but I can tell you this. What I have learned from history is that when dictators make threats, they carry them out. When Hitler said he was going to kill the Jews, he did. When Stalin basically said he was going to starve the kulaks into submission to his socialist utopia, he did. When Saddam Hussein basically started rattling his saber and saying, I'm going to go and take this guy, he did. They did. These things happen. People talk about the risk of intervention. I read enough history to know what the risk of non-intervention is. We didn't just suddenly decide we're going to go in there and start blowing up North Korean stuff, although we've had plenty of reasons to do that. We didn't do that. But when this man launches, when this man openly declares that he is going to kill American citizens at his discretion, he's going to launch a first strike unprovoked attack against the United States of America? No, I am not going to allow that to happen. I'm not going to take the chance. I'm going to destroy those missiles before they're fueled, not before they're launched. I'm going to deploy our missile defense assets, the ones that the current president hasn't destroyed. We're going to have our airborne 747s patrolling just south of the border. We'll get them in the boost phase. We'll have Standard 3 missiles on Aegis-class vehicles stationed all along the Pacific Ocean. We'll get them in the boost phase. We'll get them in the cruise phase. We'll get them in the reentry phase. We will stop the missile, but we're not even going to allow the missile to be launched. You see, we're not going to allow it to be launched. So what's he going to do? Is he going to shell South Korea over this? Well, if he does, he's dead. He launches an attack on South Korea. He's not going to survive 24 hours. If that man were to launch an attack on South Korea, Kim Jong-un would not survive 48 hours. I would see to it. I would see to it that he did not survive 48 hours. I make it clear to him. Because, see, guys like Kim Jong-un and Saddam Hussein and Adolf Hitler and Stalin have one thing in common. Pol Pot, same way. All these guys. They're narcissists. You can't be a dictator unless you have such a sick and twisted version of your own importance and will. That's the requirement to become a dictator who murders his own people. So the only thing that they care about, and our current president is cut out of the same cloth, he's just restrained by the fabric surrounding him. The only thing that restrains these pathological narcissists is The understanding that they personally will pay with the only life they have. By the way, none of these people are religious. How can you be a religious dictator? You're the religion if you're a dictator. None of these guys are religious people. They're not concerned about the afterlife. They want power, and they want all of this stuff. Kim Jong-un makes a statement like that. I'm fully aware of this. Kim Jong-un says, I'm going to nuke America in order to pacify his own internal dissent. He's doing it in order to stay in power. But if you think that I'm the kind of person, if you think that there should be somebody running this country who just is ready to take that at face value, the man is 3 generations of crazy. Kim Il-sung was crazy. He was a crazy dictator. Kim Jong-il was barking mad, and this is his son. So he may actually believe he can get away with nuking this country. He may actually think he can do it. What does he know? He hasn't been anywhere. He hasn't seen anything. All he's been told is what he's been told by his own dad and the own propaganda bubble that they live in. And by the way, how many of you out there think that one of these North Korean generals, they're all the same age, they're all the same height, they're all the same build, they have so many medals on their chest, these North Korean generals, I'm not making this up, I saw this recently, that they actually have medals on their pants now because their chests are so full of medals because of all of the incredible heroic things that all of these North Korean generals have done in the last 50 years when North Korea has not been in battle with anybody. Do you actually think that one of these people, one of these generals, or 2 or 5 or 10 are going to go up to this dictator and say, President Kim, we can't possibly win this war. The Americans are infinitely smarter than we are. They're infinitely more powerful than we are. They simply will just destroy us. They'll simply annihilate us. You have no idea what kind of forces we're engaged with here. Our technology is papier-mâché technology. We do things that look like the West, but the West actually does them. Our stuff doesn't work. Their stuff does, and they've got thousands of times more of it than we do. This is insane. Who's going to say that to him? Nobody. So Kim Jong-un never hears these conflicting opinions. Kim Jong-un is a psychopath. And when a psychopath threatens my life, I'm going to take it seriously. And so if a psychopath is in a rubber room and says, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to assume that if this guy ever gets out of the rubber room, he may, in fact, try to kill me. But if a psychopath is behind bars, and the psychopath says, I'm going to kill you, and in the cell with him is a .45 automatic, a 7-round magazine, then I'm not going to take that chance. I'm not going to just wait to get shot at. No. That guy's going to lose that gun. He's going to lose that gun, he's going to lose that ammunition, and he's going to lose the opportunity to take that threat to market. How hard is this to understand? I don't understand what did Obama do about this when his country was threatened with nuclear attack? What did Barack Obama do? Nothing. We just ignore him. We're just going to ignore him. We're not going to take him seriously. We're not going to dignify that with an answer. Like I said, if that's a guy locked in a rubber room, that might be a strategy you want to take. But the guy has nuclear weapons. We know he has actual nuclear weapons, and we know he has missile technology. So now it's not a question of a guy in a rubber room locked away someplace. It's a guy who's 4 feet away from you. He may be behind bars of a cell, but he has a gun and he has ammunition. He has the means to drop you down and kill you dead. I don't take this is where it's no longer. It's not academic anymore. It's not isn't that cute anymore. It's not we're not going to dignify this with an answer anymore. I agree we don't engage him diplomatically. We simply say the next time that a Korean missile shows up in daylight on the way out to the launch pad, just vaporize it, it's gone. No warning, no explanation. We have given our explanation. It's in response to your policies. When you publicly change your policies, the way you publicly change them to this policy, we'll decide whether or not we want to change our policies in return. Just that simple. Every time I take a drink of water now, people tell me I had a Marco Rubio moment when I was up in Canada, speaking at that conservative conference. I did about 6 or 7 minutes, and then I had the water bottle on the floor. I said, excuse me one second while I ruin my political career. Went down, took a big drink of water. Everybody laughed and applauded. And I really just made theater out of it. I just drank the whole bloody bottle. I said, man, that was so worth it. That was just delicious. Here's another shot for the House of Representatives. This is what this country's become now, right? We're going to talk about people drinking water. A guy's out there, President of the United States, tells the American people that he has the right to kill them on American soil at his sole discretion. The leader of an insane country makes a threat about nuclear missiles and nuclear weapons, both of which he possesses, and no one talks about that. But a guy doing a speech takes a sip out of water, and it's national news in Obama's America today. That's why you should have nothing but Republican presidents and politicians from this point forward, because if you had nothing but you make this case to the American people, it should be nothing but Republicans in office from this point forward, only because that would mean that there would be a press corps. Because if they were Republicans, the press would be sniffing out insanity, corruption, and crime instead of protecting it. Man, I would have loved to have the ability to just do it. I'd love to have the ability to just do it. I'd love to have that lunatic insult and threaten my country with nuclear annihilation, and just go out there and make a very quick speech, make sure that it's very clear, brief, and to the point, and then just sit back there and wait to hear, yeah, they're rolling out their next test vehicle. Okay. How many cruise missiles do you think it would take? Probably one, Mr. President. Let's send 100. Because we can. Anyway, Stratosphere Lounge for another day. 26, I think this is number 26. We'll get it up on YouTube hopefully tomorrow. I'll put a link up on the Facebook page. As always, thanks not only for your questions, but thanks for your support. And I've been really busy lately, and I've been really traveled out and burned out and worn out, and I'm about to come out the other side. So I think we'll be feeling a lot better. We'll get back in the rhythm of these things. But thanks again for all your support on everything, and I guess we'll see you next time. Bye-bye now.